Wicked. Here we are with Kriben. Hey, brother.
Hey, Zuli, how are you?
So good. I should be wearing this. I probably should wear this. I've got a slip disc in the neck.
Ooh.
So I'm like 98% amazing, but just physically I'm a little bit hampered, if probably the right word. So yeah, and it's been like this for about 6 weeks. So it's like at the beginning of the first couple of weeks, I was a bit depressed and sad about, because I love moving, I love physical. I'm practicing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I'm bouldering, I'm training, I'm doing lots of moving, dancing. So I've had to chill out on that, like literally chill out and be pretty much horizontal a lot of the time. So that kind of got me down a little bit, but then I kind of went, actually, this isn't really that useful to be, I did my down, they say you got to feel it to heal it. So I felt it and I healed it. And then now I'm like getting on with it and just, I'm feeling a lot better about things.
Good to hear.
Yourself, how you getting on?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm crazy busy at the moment. And
with what?
Lots of stuff. I guess my focus, Zulu, is around gut health and getting the message of digestive health out there. I struggled myself, I guess, from something that's really left field. I struggled most of my life with anxiety and depression.
Can relate.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge issue across the world. There's this depression and anxiety epidemic happening, and most people are not aware about it. But just probably about 7 years ago, I discovered the link between, I guess, the gut and the brain, and that's been my life mission to, I guess, firstly heal myself through the gut and get my anxiety and depression under control.
So that's been good for you, has it? It's like, did you go, okay, there's a link here, then did you find studies, or did you just find from what you ate, or like, because what were you studying before? Like, was that your field? Yeah, how'd that come about?
Yeah, actually, Zul, I'm a food scientist by background, so I've got a degree in food science, and it was about 8 years ago. My life actually just fell apart like totally, and I found myself alone in an apartment on the verge of suicide. But having that
rewind, scientific, you can't just start at the end. You can't just start at the end. Let's rewind a little bit how you got to there.
Yeah. So I was working in corporate at the time for big food manufacturing for would have been about 12 years at the time. And just the stress of work, the pressure, just life pressure, children, my marriage collapsed, and I ended up in an apartment by myself. Actually, my wife and I split at the time, and I was there about to end my life.
So dead set, like, pardon the pun. So you were legitimately like, all right, cool. So you were working what? Like how many hours a week, and you were kind of focused on work too much, or like is that why the relationship happened, or was there other stuff, and then was it like, Jesus, like what have I done, and you started beating yourself up, or was like the anxiety and the depression something that you had from a young age, or did it cultivate as a result of the work, or like, tell us a little bit about that.
That's really interesting, Zuli, because I've spoken about this so many times, but no one's actually asked me in depth about that period of my life and the specificity and the specifics of it. I've suffered with anxiety.
Feel free to share as much as you or as little as you want. Obviously, I'm just curious minded, and I like to unravel the whole stories.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I guess it's something I've struggled my whole life. Like as long as I can remember, I've always been that anxious, shy, quiet little mouse that's scared to open my mouth, and always feeling on edge, always feeling self-conscious, always up in my head. It's just I don't know whether it's nurture or nature, but maybe a combination of both genetics and also, maybe upbringing or some childhood.
Is it something that like you have that in the family, or like the relatives, like the mom, dad, grandparents, or something, or is it siblings, or is it something as cousins like that? Or
I don't think so. I can't say it's something in my family per se. I would say it's probably some traumas in the childhood realm. That's kind of the root of it. But and partly wiring of being a really heady person. Like if you look at my Myers-Briggs profile, it's introverted and INTJ. So I'm an introvert. I'm very much in my head. I'm very heady. I'm very scientific. I'm very analytical. So I've had to spend a lot of time to get myself more into my body as opposed to being up in my head and thinking too much. What really beats me down is that inner critic. That inner critic really smashes me. I'm my worst enemy, I would say. I'm my biggest critic. It's like I'm not good enough in my head. That's just me. That's my worry. And I've had to work towards, like, firstly getting out of my head and just saying, hey, Mr. Critic, I hear you. Just take a chill pill now, because I know you're serving a purpose, and I know you've served some purpose in my past. But now you need to take a chill pill and just, and let some other parts of myself come out and shine. But it
reminds me of the, I think, Inside Out. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Love
it. There's parts of self. And our mutual friend Claire D, she's huge on, the voice dialogue, and I'm a big proponent of voice dialogue and actually allowing these different parts of self to speak and have their moment, because when they have their moment, it allows you to shift and change. It's when you hold on to those voices and you try and suppress it and say, hey, mister, I want to talk, let me out, and it sort of manifests in negative ways.
So you got to a point where the judge, I'm imagining like this little judge with the gavel and inside your head, like the critic, like we call it, having like center stage. You know how like Joy had center stage in the Inside Out show? It was almost like the judge had the center stage and was the boss of everything, and was like, actually, now the judgment is that you deserve to die. That's the point that you got to. It's just like, the judgment is it's the death sentence, and that's where you were in the apartment. Is it something like that?
It's exactly like that. And when I recall the time, that period, I was seeing psychologists. I was having my hormones tested. The naturopath that I was seeing was testing my cortisol levels at the time. He goes, man, what's going on here? These cortisol levels, you wake up and they go up. It's natural to go up when you wake up, but it doesn't come down. What's going on, man? It's like you got elevated cortisol levels all the time. Something's got to give here. So, and part of it's psychological when it comes to depression. The other part is the biochemistry of the body. And that's when I discovered the connection between, hormones, the gut and mind connection.
Is that like endocrinology stuff, or?
Yeah, in endocrinology, but we're also talking, very early microbiome research, the gut microbiome, the gut bacteria, how they're involved in producing, or in the process with the cells and the gut cells producing hormones like serotonin, GABA, acetylcholine, all these kind of neurotransmitters and chemicals that make you feel good. And it's much like how like narcotics work, because they're kind of enhancing these neurotransmitters like dopamine. But I discovered, I'm not claiming to be the one that discovered it, but the self-discovery is discovering that the gut, having the gut right, is very important to your psychology and how you actually feel.
So when you got into it, I imagine with your scientific brain, were you like excited and like, I can conduct this experiment? Were you using your own body as experimentation? Were you looking with the not magnifying microscope at all different things? Like, were you getting deep into it like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, the first thing is to look at. I'm a big reader. I read a lot of books. So first book up, just by Google searching, gut and brain and all this kind of stuff, I came across a study, or some studies done by Natasha Campbell McBride, who had an autistic child. She wrote a book called The Gaps book, I think, of gastrointestinal psychology syndrome book. She had an autistic child, which is very much manifesting in psychological symptoms, and managing to address these issues by focusing on the gut and essentially changing diet. So rather than me looking down a microscope, it was more like changing my diet and seeing how I feel. And that's when I stumbled upon things like kefir, which is a fermented dairy product, which affected how I felt substantially from the get-go.
Yeah. So is this like introducing is it microdosing, or like what, or like is it fasting? Is it like so you can actually know what it is that's actually doing the work? Like, yeah, what did it look like back then?
Yeah, the GAPS protocol was something I started with, and it's cutting out all the crap. Really, it's firstly
What do you call crap? What's the crap?
Crap is essentially processed foods. So
Anything in box.
Anything boxed, nothing made in a factory. And we're going back to actually buying fresh fruits and vegetables, organic if possible, cooking from scratch, and not having anything processed or artificial. And then also eliminating a lot of common things that irritate the gut, and things like your FODMAPs type foods.
Go into the FODMAPs for those who don't know what that is.
FODMAPs is a protocol developed by Monash University, and it's essentially eliminating fructose, oligosaccharides, all these kind of complex carbohydrates that ferment in the gut and may cause discomfort, bloating, irritation. So you're taking essentially a lot of grain type products out, taking wheat out, a lot of legumes, and keeping it very simple, having lots of bone broth. It's a very basic diet. It's hard to follow in the long term, FODMAPs and GAPS diet, but if you follow it for, say, a few months, that allows essentially you getting out of the way and allowing the gut to heal, that natural innate knowledge of the body to switch on to heal the gut. And then you can find yourself consuming foods that typically maybe you're allergic to or causes bloating or irritation.
So what are you saying? So you're saying that if you do spend for 3 months following, say, a FODMAPs and a GAPS diet, that will increase the, how would you call what's the word I'm looking for? I guess the strength or the durability of the gut to then be able to handle the foods. For instance, you might be able to eat more gluten than usual or something because you're not operating from an inflamed gut, which is that what's happening in the main time? Like most people walking around with an inflamed gut because of all the packaged food, because of all the lack of nutritious whole, nutrient dense whole foods. Is this what's actually happening? Like people are walking around with like an inflamed gut, essentially.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, inflammation is where disease starts. So you got the systemic body-wide inflammation that most of us are walking around with, and hence we're not feeling like the way we're actually designed to feel. And the gut lining is actually very thin. It's only a cell layer deep, so it's very easy to disrupt and damage. It's very thin. It's like literally taking a hair and cutting it in half, and that's the lining. And essentially, you're getting a new lining pretty much every day or two. All those cells are being regenerated. So the best thing is actually to not think about it as a diet and keeping it like if you're going to follow a protocol, if you're suffering from some disease or illness or discomfort, to use a protocol to bring healing to the gut. But then flipping the script and really thinking about how can I just eat clean all the time. So it's not like a free pass to heal your gut and then eat crap again, and then that cycle continues. It's about really food.
Oh yeah, I was wondering, like, so will strengthen it over time. It could be. I was just curious. Maybe that.
Things slowly and gradually. Things like potentially
piece of toast or something, or
a piece of toast now and then. Like it's not something like wheat is something, especially Australian wheat. It's highly inflammatory. It's just it's been bred over many cycles to be resistant to pesticide, to have higher yields and things. But it's funny when you go to Europe, the wheat, and a lot of the pesticides are not approved in Europe. So you'll find yourself being able to eat more wheat type products in Europe, say in Australia. So if I'm in Australia, the only wheat product I will eat is a proper sourdough bread. The sourdough fermentation is how we used to make bread a long time ago. It takes about 7 days to make it, so a factory will never do it. I used to work in bread factories, and that bread is ready, within hours. It's quick, it's mass produced. But the thing is that gluten, which is the protein in bread, hasn't been broken down like in a fermentation step when you make proper sourdough.
So then body has to do the job. This is why I fall asleep. I eat a donut.
And sugar. That's another big
Yeah, so talk to us a little bit about that, about sucrose, fructose, glucose. What's the difference of the sugars that we can consume and the effect that they have? I'm a big proponent of listening to the body as well. Like, I'll often just not eat sugar for weeks on end, and then I'll eat nothing but sugar for like 3 days. And so, like, what's been your findings around that stuff?
Yeah, it's really interesting. If you look back, sugars are something that gets the bee under my bonnet, because sugar is a highly addictive substance. I mean, we're talking about,
it's like the tolerance goes up real quick.
Yeah, it's like more addictive than cocaine. You know, so it's really addictive. But if you look back at our society really, the modern, I guess, the British Empire is largely built around sugar. So I used to work for the biggest sugaring manufacturer in Australia. So
biggest drug dealer out there.
Yeah, I was one of the biggest. Yeah. So I've seen that refining process very intimately. You know, you've taken a relatively natural product like sugarcane, but once you actually convert it into a crystalline sugar, the processing strips out all the minerals and nutrients out of this, and you're literally left with pure sucrose. Now, sucrose is hugely damaging to the gut because it causes dysbiosis, and dysbiosis is when you've got the wrong types of microorganisms dominating. And this is where you find things like the domination of Candida albicans, because you're feeding it selectively by giving it sucrose, plus all the chemical compounds that are passed on through the actual refining or growing first, and then all the way through the refining process. It's all, if you look at a sugar factory, it's like a chemical processing plant.
Yeah, it's almost, when you're talking about it, it's almost like like you might take the coca leaf, for instance, and then you see how it gets down to the actual cocaine crystal, the salt, you know. It's like, that's pretty much what it is. Like, you eat some coca leaf, it's fine, it's sustained energy, it's reasonable on the body, but then you bring that crack cocaine, or that salt that people are insufflating, snorting, or whatever, then it becomes this highly addictive narcotic, which has got no freaking good properties in it. It's got none of the green, none of the, the sunlight, and all the goodness, the minerals that are in it. And it's, imagine, like you just said, like, it's the biggest chemical processing plant. It's like, and then people are stirring it into their sugar, and into their milk or their coffee. It might even be their almond milk chai latte or whatever it is, and they're putting the sugar in. I'm like, you just ruined perfectly good, perfectly nutritious drink right there. That's been a big one actually as well, like seeing the difference between the different sugars, how they affect me as well. Like things like stevia, doesn't have that effect, or something like, I even notice effect of like, what do they call this stuff? What do they call this other sweetener that they have? It's agave. I find that I get a bit of a spike on that as well. But just having that awareness, because a lot of people don't have the awareness of how it's affecting or what it's doing. Me, I'm highly sensitive. I'm practicing lots of presence. I'm practicing meditation, mindfulness all the time. As soon as something hits my system, I can feel it instantly on the energetic level, the emotional level, physical level, whereas not a lot of people are even noticing, or being able to notice how it actually feels. Oh, I'm lethargic. I wonder why. Check the diet. Or, I'm feeling like I can't sleep, insomnia. Check the diet. Like,
Yes, absolutely. So
talk to us a little bit about that chemical processing, that happens, and why, or what are some alternatives? Like, how, can you use sugarcane? Are there other alternatives that are less damaging to the system?
Yeah, I mean, there's natural forms of cane sugar. Like if you look at something like a Rapidura sugar, which is literally produced in Sri Lanka, they've still got donkeys carrying the sugar cane, and you've got some guy sitting in front of a pot and stirring it and evaporating the sugar out, and you get this brown crystalline product after all the water is evaporated.
So is this something that is created in those mass-produced factories, but then it's refined even further, or is it just doesn't even get to that process, that stage?
It doesn't get to that. I've seen it myself. It's literally guys crushing up sugarcane and then putting it under essentially a heat and taking all the water out of it. And what's left is something like panela in South America. They use it almost like a cough medicine, or if they get sick, they put a teaspoon of it in water and drink it because it's still got all the minerals and goodness in it.
And what do we do with that in the factories? Where does that go?
So what happens is you strip out the molasses out of the juice, and you just want this white, pure looking substance. And it's pretty much driven by what consumer expectation is for sugar. You want the white crystalline thing. But when you go through that process, you've got nothing left. I mean, all the molasses, all the minerals are taken out. So the molasses mineral taken out, what happens to that? Is that put in other products and sold, or how does that work? Yeah, you could go into pet feed. You could go into, or sometimes they even blend crystalline white sugar back with the molasses and call it raw sugar. But it's still processed. It's just back. So, but I think
double handling.
Yeah, double handling, because people think we want brown sugar because it's healthy, but it's not healthy. Brown sugar.
Yeah, so what in terms of what's available? Say I walk into a supermarket, they have these things on offer. If I guess is the basic rule, is it if it's in a package, is it pretty much no good for you, or is it like, are there some actual products there that are going to have nutrients in them and bioavailable minerals and vitamins and so on and so forth?
I think Rapidura and Panella are both available in the supermarket shelf. I still caution. I mean, we still need to moderate the quantity. And my recommendation to people is to keep your sugar levels under 6 teaspoons a day. So it's again looking at all the foods you're eating, because there's hidden sugars. Like, firstly, soft drinks should be out.
Well, that's about 12 teaspoons in a minute, or however long it takes you to drink.
That's it. So I'm talking 6 teaspoons in a whole day. So that's not a lot of sugar, especially with the hidden sugars in all the packaged foods. So if you start avoiding packaged foods, packaged sauces, packaged condiments, that's a huge step to eliminating a lot of sugar in the diet.
And is it, I noticed they have like carbohydrates, will say on the back of the thing. Essentially, I just read, in my mind, carbohydrate and sugar is the same if it's written on the package. It's like, 56 grams of carbohydrate. I'm like, it's got a ton of sugar in it. The only reason I look at it like that is because I had a diabetic partner before, and that's what she did. I was like, all right, I'm going to listen to the diabetic,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's how I know about the sugar, the carbohydrate sugar relation with that diabetes. Talk to us a little bit. Do you know much about like disease and like the specific diseases, what's the causes and what we can avoid because a lot of us will end up diabetic. I don't know what the stats are, but my dad has recently been diagnosed diabetes. They don't know which type yet. They're trying to find out, the doctors and such. And that is from a life of drinking beer mainly. He's been drinking alcohol for many, 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 many years. Never touched a sweet in his life. Doesn't like sweets at all. But drinking lots of beer and end up diabetic. And that's something that's actually in the family and the heritage as well. So yeah, what specific diseases do you know about and the causes and how we can avoid?
Yeah, diabetes is a huge one, and that's linked to excessive amounts of sugar consumption, which is the primary issue. But then it's also that, you mentioned carbohydrates before. What we're finding is that the type of bacteria in your gut determines on how you actually eat sugar, like how does the body metabolize sugar. And diabetes is pretty much producing insulin, elevated levels of blood sugar, and not being able to cope with it. So it really depends on your own unique makeup. So it's not like you can say, well, put everybody on a low carbohydrate diet and that's going to fix things. We have to address firstly, the types of bacteria in the gut, because that's where a lot of disease starts, is in the gut. So that's diabetes. And then you've got things like cancers, which are prevalent, highly prevalent. And a lot of these cancers are caused primarily, I think, because of all the E numbers and chemicals, and through our whole ecosystem, whether it's the plastics, whether it's the chemicals in our food, whether it's the pesticides being sprayed onto the crops. So a lot of these modern lifestyle diseases didn't exist, say, 70, 80 years ago. It's just because of this rampant kind of amount of chemicals coming through our system. Even when you look at shampoos, you look at skincare products, the skin itself is a permeable organ. So typically you got to think, well, if you're putting it in your skin, you got to be willing to eat it. So that's a good one to think about it, because it's getting blood. So
That's a rule. It doesn't go on my skin unless it's edible. Essentially, it's something I go by. So in terms of like, so you got the cancers, and is that it? I know there's been studies linking like high cortisol and high stress to a lot of the cancers as well. So if you are stressed out, if you are, like you said, you know, just to rewind a little bit to the story of you know, ready to commit suicide at that level, was that like you sitting there going, all right, cool, I'm going to end it? Talk to us through like what the thought process was there, what was happening, and what shifted. Obviously you're alive here to tell the story, you know, what was that, what was going on in the mind, and what happened, and then specifically what experiments did you find that you did with the gut to get to a stage where you're, you know, where you're still here with us and now you're actually committed to this as your life path, you know?
So there's a couple of things that really helped me. The first thing is going to a psychologist and having some counseling and just being able to talk. And then I was led through a guided meditation practice. It was only 5 minutes, but man, I felt great after that. I felt so grounded, and that kind of led me into finding transcendental meditation, having a regular transcendental meditation practice at least once a day for 20 minutes. And I've been doing that for years. So I had to fork out like $2,000 to learn how to do it, but I've stuck with it. I really believe in transcendental meditation.
That's good. That's good return on investments. Like it's about, so far it's like maybe less than $1 a day or something like investment if you're still doing it. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm still doing it and I highly believe in it. And then the other thing was, you know, like just they suggested I actually went on to a Prozac or a Zoloft or some sort of antidepressant medication, but I didn't want to do that. So that's what essentially led to me finding these foods that could boost serotonin and boost.
So what was the thought process behind not wanting to do that? Because often people will just say, okay, and just do what the doctor's told. Like,
I was just at that point, I was just really, you know, coming up against or moving away from anything artificial, anything that was, you know, kind of drug related, anything that was chemical. Because I've been in the food industry for so long. I've seen the chemicals that go into our foods. I was a developer, so I was actually putting these things in there. I was kind of moving heavily away from that and kind of being influenced or moving more towards a natural path. That's why I was seeing a naturopath rather than going to, you know, your conventional medical professional. So I was moving in that direction, and then it was crystal clear in my head that food is medicine.
Yeah. I get I've copped a lot of flack in the past for, you know, I'll post something online saying, you know, pills, all these different medications, this is poison, and nature is medicine, nature, fruit, you know, like things of the nature. And then I cop a lot of stuff from people with mental illnesses or that rely on medication to get through every day. They're like, fuck you don't know how it is. I'm like, well, actually, I've been on both sides of the fence. Let's not attack me. You know, let's open a discussion here. This you know, those statements are kind of polarizing, and it is what it is. But you know, it's like maybe just open up that conversation, and it's both true. There's not, like, I believe, you know, like you said, psychiatrists, you might have medication. If people can't actually function and can't have an option, like every day they're thinking about every second of every day they want to kill themselves, hearing voices, seeing things that aren't there, you might need to balance those chemicals out with some artificial stuff, you know. Like I'm a big proponent. I've been in like months and months taking medication myself because I couldn't handle every moment, every day. I was like depressive thoughts, suicidal thoughts. So I was like, fuck, man, maybe I got to try. I've tried the food, I've tried the chain, nothing's working. So I got to take some of this on board to get me to a level where actually now it's more about nature and food is medicine kind of vibe, you know.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think if you're really ill, you know, whether it's, you know, any type of drug, if you're really sick, you definitely take the medication.
I know you're there bleeding out the thigh or something. You're not gonna put some bloody, you know, herbal medicine. You got to stitch it up with the hospital.
Yeah. 100%
get some morphine in you. Yeah.
I agree. We have an excellent medical system. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I just think that with some things, it's whether you treat the symptom or whether you take proactive steps to kind of prevent it. And I think if you're at that point where you're having these suicidal thoughts or you're having this mental illness and you can't function, definitely there's some good psychiatry medication. There's good psychiatrists that can deal with it. I guess from where I was coming from is someone that was just purely by my choice. That's my choice. I decided to look for a natural way, and it paid huge dividends. But I don't think there's just one way to approach it. I think it's all about balance in your life, and having a clean diet, having a good exercise regime, almost having movement embedded into everything that you do. We're far too sedentary as a species now compared to what we used to be like. So having constant movement and all that's going to help you feel amazing. And things like cold showers, things like sauna treatment, hot, cold, all that really boosts your neurotransmitters and actually feel good. But you've got to be proactive about it and really take steps and not wait till you're down at kind of that really low level. And I think most of it's because of lack of knowledge or education. And I think if you can get this message out there that using a balanced approach, you can prevent those type of illnesses.
And with the balanced approach, do you know much about the other side of things in terms of, like you were talking earlier about the consumer demand driving the production of this stuff? Is there, I don't know, stats showing that there's a decrease in sugar intake or wheat intake, these kind of stuff? Or like now that more education is available, Instagram, podcasts, so on and so forth, are we seeing a natural curve like of lowering of these, or do you know anything about that side of things?
Yeah, sure. I can speak anecdotally. I knew when I was working in the sugar industry, there was talk already back then, and it was quite a few years ago, about the declining consumption of sugar. They were
being a bad thing for business, right?
And that's why they were pushing heavily into your artificial sweeteners like sucralose and aspartame and things like that. But now we know, scientists know, that aspartame is hugely damaging to the gut microbiome in the gut. So, and essentially can lead to actually being worse, more poisonous than sugar itself. So, but the sugar industry knows this, the soft drink industry also knows this, that there's declining consumption of sugar-containing products.
And what's the sustainability? Is it, you're going to coming back to old mate in the factory making up that molasses to make our soft drinks now, or is it becoming like, for instance, I say like kombucha, for instance, is a massive rise in kombucha consumption, and these things, is that still going to be messing with our gut because it's based on heavily on sugar? Or
no, fermented foods are, the sugar is mostly consumed in the ferment. So kombuchas, things like water kefir, they have a far lower sugar content than, say, a soft drink. So hence, that's why you're seeing an explosion in things like kombucha, because people are getting so savvy now. They know too much sugar is not great. So they're moving toward beverages.
So is that like something that Coca-Cola might try to start making kombucha and all this sort of stuff? Or
They just bought Mojo in South Australia. So Coca-Cola's already starting. And Pepsi as well, I think in the US has bought a water kefir manufacturer. So
it's the consumer demand. So that's in terms of like the breads and stuff, is that because there's so many people I see just buying bread, and I don't necessarily know the numbers, but it doesn't look like there's less and less, white breads and that on the shelves. Although if you go into like your Whole Foods, you will get your seed breads and this kind of stuff. Like, do you know anything about that side of stuff in terms of the wheats and the other gut damaging products out there?
Yeah, there's an explosion for gluten-free products. The watch out is that when you take the gluten out, you've got to put something back into it. So
what is it?
What is it? I'm still not a huge fan of just thinking, well, I can eat gluten-free products and think it's healthier for me. It's still a processed product. So there's still some nasties in there. The best thing is to move towards a more natural, clean eating diet, cooked from scratch. Health is, I know it's hard, it takes more time and more effort, but it's hugely rewarding to the body. Like in my household, like the majority of the stuff it's either grown in the garden, or it's bought from a farmer's market, or it's bought from a fresh grocer. We buy fresh meat. We go to a butcher that we know and trust. He's not putting chemicals and antibiotics through his products, mainly organic, cooked from scratch. And 40 years old, and I've never felt as good as I do now.
All of the things taste better as well, the way that you mentioned, when you put that time, that love in it, it just, like I had some fruit trees, a whole bunch of fruit trees when living in Tasmania. There was peaches, apricots, hazelnuts, cherries, cherry trees, strawberries, raspberries, all sorts of different apples. It was just this amazing, like, nectarines, and like just eating it fresh off there, you can actually taste the sunshine, literally taste the sunshine that was in these fruits, and like just tastes so much better. And when you're making those foods yourself, like, just from that scratch, it's just like you can literally taste, just the time it takes, and you can taste the lack of love in the processed stuff. It's just like, oh, this does taste hollow, or it just doesn't taste like there's much spirit in it,
Yeah, and it's all the nutrients have essentially been stripped out, or most of it's been stripped out. So hence there's an explosion now of supplements, because most of the nutrients are stripped out of the food. It's almost empty. So you've got to supplement with some, pill to get the vitamins and minerals back in.
Talk to us about the supplement stuff. So is there, I hear that like you can walk into a Woolworths or whatever, GNC, and you go and you get a lot of these pills or these vitamins or these stuff that you get off the shelf, and 95% of it isn't bioavailable. Is that like an actual real thing, or is that just hyperbole? Or
I don't actually know the scientific basis of that 95%, but we do need to question about are these things actually doing anything in our bodies? Are we just spending a lot of money on stuff that's going to pee out and it has no benefits? I think a far better approach is to move towards really clean eating, something that's really super fresh, preferably organic, and supplementing certain things. Like certain things I do supplement with. I know I don't get enough of vitamin D from some dark skin, so I don't absorb as much vitamin D as, say, a lighter skinned person. So I do supplement vitamin D. Other things that I supplement is something like omega-3, because I know there's a bunch of good research on omega-3 in the brain and cardiovascular health, so I will supplement that.
So this is like your flax seeds, or you've got your
fish. I'll supplement a fish oil or cod liver oil or something like that. Something very rich in vitamin D. That's about the extent of things that I commonly supplement. The rest is just really clean, healthy eating and lots of variety in food, because we tend to, as a society, eat the same thing over and over, the same type of vegetables, the same type of meats. So what I try and do is I try and mix things up and eat what's in season. Like asparagus in season now, so I'll buy some asparagus, and I'll have, like the science is telling us, we need to have like about 30 to 40 different types of plant foods every week to get that diversity of the gut microbiome and the gut bacteria up. That's going to give you that health benefit.
That's a good one as well. Always on because I got a couple of children as well, and for myself, but I just try to make what's on the plate as colorful as possible.
Yes,
that's kind of a principle. I'm like, if there's lots of colors, then I'm hopefully getting a bunch of the vitamins and the minerals.
Absolutely. A lot of those antioxidants and a lot of these vitamins are the colors that make up the food. So that's a good way to do it. A rainbow approach of having lots of different colors on that plate.
And on that, in terms of kids, and we've got Halloween, recently, I was out there. I like the idea of people giving out toothbrushes for Halloween. Trick or treat, you have a toothbrush, have some floss, But yeah, talk to us a little bit about that, because I guess that's the consumer, that's the future consumer, right? Is our children, and just the education around it. Are you teaching this stuff in schools? Are you looking to, or like getting this? I see like Jamie Oliver changing the game over in schools over in the UK and things like this. So what's happening in that regard? Do you know much about it? Yeah, can you talk to us a little bit about the education side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk from a father. I've got three beautiful young boys, and the eldest has just turned 12. So the issue with children is, let's be realistic, they don't have the same level of discipline as, say, an adult. So they're gonna fall into addictions a lot easier than even adults do. So I'm strict with my kids about what they can eat and what they can't eat. I do allow them to have treats at times, just for, so they don't get psychologically damaged and think, oh, I've missed out on having chips and lollies and all that.
So when you say strict, are you like, this is what you're getting, you're going to starve pretty much if you don't eat it? And like, do you tolerate like pickiness and that sort of stuff? Or
my kids are pretty good. I have to say my kids are pretty good. From a very young age, we've kind of instilled this clean eating ideology, so we don't really struggle too much. The only time we really struggle is if they've got events at school or school canteen, or if they're going out with, like sleepovers with friends, and then we kind of a bit more lax about it. We won't tell the parents that are looking after the kids, no pizza, no E-numbers, no processed foods. But if whatever's within my control, within my household, if I'm taking out all the E-numbers, I'm taking out all the additives, I'm taking out all the artificial colors, all the things that are damaging to them, 80%, I think as parents are doing a pretty good job, because we can't control everything. I can't control my parents. They don't share the same ideologies fully in terms of my strictness. So I have to be flexible. But 80% is pretty good, right, Zulu?
100%, 80-20 rule. What would you say would be, for anyone like listening to this and just wanting, we talked about FODMAPs and gaps. That's a great way like to get started. Are there some like basic principles that you share, like, maybe 5 principles around, all right, that you can just immediately implement into your life that will look after your gut health, that will look after that will affect you, on all the levels. Obviously if your diet, your nutrition is right, that your mind is going to function better, your body's going to function better, you're going to feel better about yourself. And you already mentioned like meditation daily as well. I think we kind of skipped past it, but I believe, that's my jam. I'm like that. If you're not meditating, you're going to find it a lot more difficult to actually be aware of what you're putting into your body. The more you're meditating, the more aware you become of actually, what am I doing here? Rather than unconsciously putting food in your mouth or putting products on your skin or putting yourself in situations that are unhealthy for you,
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with something I've never spoken about before, and something I'm really focused on at the moment. And that's treating movement as almost something that you build into your day. I don't think what motivates people is, you're coming up this summer, you want to look good in the mirror, so you get motivated, you get a gym membership, you go to the gym. I don't think we need to do that. I think just little small steps, like I'm talking about small bits of movement through the day. I'm talking about, vacuuming your house, making it something that's fun. It could be something like fun, like dance, where maybe you're doing a dance routine in front of on YouTube or something like that, or just simply going and vacuuming your house, cleaning your car, getting into the garden, just building these daily movement practices and treating movement as something almost like diet. Like, am I going to, like breakfast, lunch, and tea, when am I going to have my daily movements for breakfast, lunch, tea? So there's small little movement patterns have helped me substantially. So I don't have to feel like, okay, I'll sit on my backside the whole week on the couch watching Netflix and binge watching. And then, I have to go to the gym now and work out for 2 hours. I think it's important to have like these practices like gym and yoga and things like that are very dear to my heart. But more important is having those daily movement practices. And I have something called an aura ring. I'm not sure you've seen this.
Oh, the aura, yeah.
Aura ring. And this thing reminds me all the time, like, am I getting a bit too lax? Am I sitting down too much? Like even in your workspace, you could have a standing desk. So instead of sitting down, they say sitting is the new smoking, we're sitting down far too much. Having a standing desk where you're standing up, that's going to be hugely helpful. So this is the tips on the actual exercise. Mindfulness is hugely important. Having a daily meditation practice, and meditation looks very different for different people. For me, it's TM. For others, it could be a yoga practice. For others, it could be breathing practices. It could be going for a 20-minute walk and just being present and just cycling through your senses as you're walking through. That's something I do often. What am I hearing? What am I smelling? What am I tasting? My ground on my feet on the ground. How am I feeling right now? And what is something I'm looking that I've never seen before? And just those simple things will force you to cycle through your senses and actually be present in the moment and listen. So that's that point. In terms of diet, I keep it really simple. jerf. Just eat real food. It's a hard one. You know, just simple thing. Eat the best food that you can afford. Because if you're going to spend a ton of money when you get sick, or you're spending a ton of money on supplements, take that same investment and put it into buying the best food that you can afford. And you know, other things like the diet regime is flawed. There is no one diet that suits everybody. Everybody is extremely personalized in terms of your gut microbiome, in terms of your genetics, your lifestyle, your history. So you can't just say that being vegan is going to be the best thing for you. There's some great tools out there. You know, you can get your genes analyzed and work out all your polymorphisms and what's best for you. You can get your gut bacteria tested. And that's, you know, if you want to go to that kind of level. But other than that, just listen to your body. The body has so much intuition. If you're eating something and it's not making you feel good, just eliminate that out of your diet. You know, that's the simplest way to do it. And on a simple hack that I really recommend and I follow myself, I used to have a continuous glucose monitor attached to my body, and that's pricey. That's a couple of grand to get it put on and stuff, and monitor all the time. So then you can keep a food log and see what causes spikes in your blood glucose level, because this is what leads to a lot of issues, especially weight gain and other issues. And you can work out just by keeping a food log for 7 days and just getting a really cheap blood glucose monitor and just testing after 2 hours when you have that meal. So you log your meal, 2 hours later, test your blood glucose and see where it's at. Is it causing a spike? And then very quickly through the course of the week, you can work out things that are going to spike your blood glucose. So you don't want that. You don't want elevated blood glucose. You want a pretty stable blood glucose level. Other dietary hacks, fasting. I do intermittent fasting twice a week. So I do a 5-2. So 2 days a week, I will fast for a minimum of 16 hours. And it's pretty easy. All you do is you have your dinner pretty early the night before, and then you fast all the way up to lunchtime the next day. And that pretty much will give you your 16 hours. And that's just allowing the body to clear out all the junk out, all the dead cells.
So is that long enough? Is it 16 hours long enough? Is that how the cycle of the gut lining being flushed and regenerated? Or?
Yes, that's very important for the gut lining to rebuild as well, because when you eat, there's some damage happening potentially. So when you fast, so you're just having water essentially, and 8 hours of sleeping anyway, that just allows those cells and other cells throughout the body just to replenish.
How important is chewing your food? Extremely
important. And also mindfulness, this is huge for you as well, Zuli, because mindfulness is something that's important to you. Is to be mindful when you're actually eating. And not in front of the TV, not with a mobile phone. Like it should just be people. When we eat,
not with a desk, the computer in front
of
you.
The desk, not rushing, because what happens is there's a phase of eating called the cephalic phase of eating, which is when the body is priming itself to take food. So all the enzymes are being produced, in the saliva, in the gut. It's priming. So we're missing that whole cephalic phase of eating by not being mindful when we're eating, and then not chewing enough to get that maceration process to break the food down, so that when it does get into the gut, it's not taking as much effort to digest it. So chewing is hugely important, and mindfulness, really tasting that food, engaging with people, talking. In my household, when we have dinner, we go around the table every night and we talk about gratitude. And we talk about what are we grateful today. We'll give 3 gratitudes around our table, and then we'll talk about what we learned today, because I want to instill in my children to really be grateful for what they have, but also to be on a quest to learn something new every single day. So when they're at school, they know when they come home, Dad's going to ask me, what did I learn today? And learning thing is not good enough, because
I forget. My son tells me I forget when I'm like, you don't forget. Come on, give me something. I know you want to some treats or some time on the tablet or something. I'm like, cough up the goods. He's like, oh, by the way, that's right. We learned how to do words today. Oh, see, I know bribery.
And you'd find this interesting, Zulu, because we're moving now, because I know futurism is a big thing for you. So we're moving towards a point where our children could potentially come up to a workforce that's automated by computers. So how do we teach our children to critically think and lead? Because I think those two skills are going to be very important for the future. There's something for it.
Yeah, well, problem solving, man. I get them.
And problem solving. Yes, yeah. Problem solving.
I get them problem solving. Like, just set tasks for them, and this is something that really stuck with me when I was super young. I got questioned. This was like first grade or before first grade, like the foundational stage, like the preparation phase before first grade and first grade. One of my teachers was always giving us like thought experiments and was asking us like impossible questions, like, you know, like riddles and things like this. So that's something that I'll share with my kids. I'll get them thinking about little riddles or little things that are unsolvable or little koans or, you know, like, so imagine this, I'll tell them a story and I'll say, how do you think the end happened? You know, like, like I'll leave out a specific piece of the story where they have to fill in the blank. So this is the way that I do it, you know, like, and as well, I use mindfulness as bribery. So I'll be like, you know, like if every minute that you meditate, you can spend on the tablet, for instance, or, you know, so, you know, it started as like, I don't want to do it now. It's like, all right, can I do an hour tonight? It's like,
that's awesome.
But those two definitely work for me. I know they work for me. So, you know, I'd love to hear what other people are doing. I've heard about, I think it was Will Smith, his dad got him to build a wall. Like literally like get with bricks and make the wall. He said, go build a wall out there. And I don't know, he had 1,000 bricks or however many bricks he had. And his dad would knock the wall down the first time. He's like, that's a terrible job. You really proud of that job? It's like sloppy, bricks are everywhere. You know, he's like, knocked it down, go do it again, do it properly. And then he did a little bit better than that, knocked it down. And, you know, like just little things like this, actually getting to do stuff. Because this stuff like this stands out. Like, imagine when my kid's older, like, Dad bloody made me meditate. If I wanted this thing, you know, Dad would, you know, set me, I don't know why, but he made me paint the fence or, you know, whatever it is, like, really taught me these lessons. So I think actually having them do things, and what I think humans in general are like this, and just because we're kind of animals, you know, we like to look at ourselves as humans, but we're pretty much just apes. But praise and, you know, like, you know, you train like a dog or any kind of creature, that the dolphin, whatever it might be, you know, praising them and giving them lots of love and actually giving them treats, I think is definitely that they respond really well with that. You know, when I'm like, oh, I'm so proud of you, I'm like, come here, give them lots of hugs. I'm like, come on, let's do it. When they do that, they thrive on that and they want to do it more.
Absolutely. That's great. That's something I probably don't do enough of. So
it's so helpful, man, and they love it, like, because they look. It's weird because before being a dad, you never, I don't know, like no one necessarily gives that much of a crap about you, you know what I mean? It's like, and then all of a sudden he's looking at you, like everything you say, they just love it. And they might act shy and like they don't, but they really like, yeah, I actually really love you, and you can feel it, you know? So having that I think the best way for me is also just embodying it. They saw me meditating for 3 years before they just, you know, actually wanted to do it, you know, so that seeing me do it is way more powerful than anything.
Absolutely. My kids, I haven't quite convinced them to meditate, but I'm working on it.
Well, you might it worked for me. I was just saying, all right, so what's the word I'm looking for? It's like the opposite of consequences. Not consequences, whatever privileges is the word I'm looking for. So whatever privileges they have, just like, actually, you don't get that privilege until you've done your mindfulness. 20 minutes, and then go for your life. So it might not, you know, they might not like it to begin with. Like, well, what? You know, where that comes, like a punishment to begin with. But at the end of the day, that when they're 20, when they're 30, they'll be going, thanks for that. I appreciate it, you know.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you taking the time to jump on and chat with us. Is
a pleasure, man.
It's what are you up to out there in terms of like, how are you going about, you know, this mission that you've decided to embark upon?
Yeah, so I started a company going back quite a couple, probably 2-3 years back now, called Nourishme Organics. essentially what we do is we teach people how to ferment. So we run fermentation workshops. We have heirloom cultures from across the world, things like koji. If you want to make miso, we're getting in some tempeh. So if you want to make beer, kombucha. So that's the core of what we do. I also have a separate company where we test your gut bacteria. That's called the Leal microbiome. So if you want to get your stool tested and work out what's in your gut and what's the good guys in there, what's the bad guys in there, and then how to rebalance it, we can show you how to do that. And the raw food store,
what's your slogan? What's it?
The slogan. I don't think we have a slogan. I'm
just thinking all the slogans are coming to me like, we don't give a shit. We give a shit.
Nourishme is sharing the gift of health and vitality through gut health.
Yeah.
I feel that we haven't thought about it. And the raw food store is for the raw food guys. So
yeah,
that's the three arcs of what we do.
Beautiful. And obviously you'll share some links underneath and people can find you through there. You've got a podcast as well, is that right?
Yes, the Gut Health Gurus podcast, where we talk about all things gut health. It's my partner and I, James Shadrack. He's got a psychology background, so very much.
James, I know James.
James Shadrack, yeah.
So shout out to Shadrack.
Shadrack. We talk about gut and brain. So, and we're getting some more guests lined up, some experts in the kind of gut health field. I was just in Paris at the Gut Brain Axis, so we've got quite a few guests lined up to talk about specific stuff around the gut health space.
And how often does that come out, and where can people find it? What's it?
Yep, the Gut Health Gurus podcast is on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on our website, www.nourishmeorganics.com.au, and it comes out roughly 1 to 2 weeks.
Beautiful. Nice work, brother. Let's wrap up, but before we go, let's tell me what because Living Life in the Flow Zone is the name of this podcast. Tell me what that means to you and how you get in the flow.
Yeah, that's flow is something that I've pondered upon a lot, and I think for me, flow is about really being in my gut, being in my body, totally out of my head, and when I'm really thriving and kicking goals, I'm not self-conscious. I'm just not giving a fuck. I'm just doing what I want to do, and just that's that feeling of exhilaration and not caring. That's just.
And how do you sort of kickstart that? Is it all through what you're putting into your body, or is it a mindset, or is it all the above? How specifically do you get into that?
Yeah, for me, I go through especially if I have to present, I will go through a routine that gets me into flow. And it typically looks like something like this. So I'll start off with a meditation for 20 minutes. It's going to sound like a long detail, but it's something I do time in, time out. So 20 minutes of meditation. Then what I'll do is I'll do what we call an Alexander lie down. I'm not sure you've heard about it. So it's literally lying down with a book under your head and I use Claire D's. She's got an audio track that I follow through that just gets me into my body, out of my head. Then I'll do some movement. I'll just put on a dance class on YouTube and just jump around like an idiot. Then I'll go into beast mode. My beast mode really brings me out into my body. It's like channeling a very primal side of myself. And you'll see in my tattoo, I've actually got a cheetah, and that's my animal, I guess my animal part, which is this cheetah. And I'll go into this beast mode. It looks ugly. It's lots of shouting and yelling and screaming and being a beast. Listening to some very provocative music to really get me into this beast side of myself. And then it's just having a cold shower for 5 minutes and screaming. And that's it. That's the routine to get me into flow.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you so much. And big ups to you, man, for changing it around. And, from where you were to where you're at now. So you're doing good things out there. And I look forward to tuning into the podcast and just all the success to you, brother.
Awesome. Thanks, Sully.
Appreciate it. And thanks for listening, fam. And until next time, keep the flow growing and the growth flowing.